and get started. Let's do roll call. Dorsal, I don't know if that's you or Claire doing that, but after we do roll call, because we do have some new board members, I believe. And then I want to give Claire an opportunity to share a little bit about herself, let you all know the amazing work that she has done in the past and how that brought her to be our new executive manager for SKIP. So Dorsal, do you want to do roll call? Is that
I can take a crack at it.
okay?
I've got the list here, so we'll start with Mayor Backus.
I am here.
Board Member Brant Schluter. Absent. Councilmember Soltis.
I am here.
And I will say, if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, please do correct me. I would appreciate being able to say your name the way it is intended. Councilmember Buxton.
Here. And I want to be the first person from my city to introduce my city pronounced Des Moines.
Ooh.
It's kind of a regional discussion, but I love Des Moines, no S at the end.
Des Moines.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Board Member Davis.
Here.
Mayor Ralph.
Good afternoon. I am here.
Wonderful. Board Member Marshall.
Here. Thank you.
Mayor Kelly. Absent. Councilmember Zimmerman.
Present.
Councilmember McGurven.
Hello, I'm here.
And Councilmember De Lestrinos Johnson.
Here.
Wonderful. All right. Roll call is complete.
Wonderful, thank you. And Claire, just so you know, we try and be a little less formal here. We go by our first names.
All right.
It just makes it easier for us, and you don't have to worry about remembering whose title it is. You just remember their name, and we find that we're less formal here. We just like to be collaborative and don't stand on formalities. So just so you're aware, you don't need to call us by our titles.
All right. It may take some getting used to. I will do my best.
Understood. And I believe, Christina, if you don't mind, if I call you Christina, you are new to our group. Before we have Claire give a little bit about her, if you would like to share anything that you would like us to know.
Oh, sure. I have been an alternate for SKIP for a couple years now. So now I've just been moved up. Debbie, she goes by Debbie. Another one of our new council members is now taking my position as alternate, and I'm excited to, not necessarily new, but I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. Well, welcome. We're excited to have you here as the committee member. So welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Claire, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. Well, thank you all. So first, actually, I want to let you know, I got COVID this week, and I am feeling not 100%. So I did just want to preface that with you. But it is not the way I wanted to start my first board meeting with you all, but didn't want you thinking, wow, she doesn't seem quite, 100%. So I just wanted to let you know. But about me, so I am just so excited to be here and to be a part of this incredible group. I know you all have just worked so hard, and Angela has really done an incredible job leading this group, and I really do look forward to carrying on that good work that you all have put in and invested the time and the energy to advancing affordable housing in South King County. I think it's really inspiring work. That's what really attracted me to your group. And I just see so much potential moving forward, and so many opportunities to do really great things. So a little bit about me. So since 2014, I've been staffing and serving elected officials in nonpartisan and in analytical roles, also government leadership in similar roles. I have a broad housing policy background. I worked at the city of Pittsburgh. I worked for a city manager in the town of Lexington, Massachusetts. I served in the city of Tacoma, most recently, providing policy support to 4 city council members and facilitated on behalf of a council member there the changes to Tacoma's multifamily property tax exemption program. And served also the 2018-2019 state legislative session as a fiscal analyst on the Senate Ways and Means Committee. And I had 23 state agencies in my portfolio, including Department of Commerce. So really got to know the ins and outs of how the state funds and administers their housing and homelessness programs. I'm a former Peace Corps volunteer. I served almost 3 years in North Macedonia, living in the world's largest Roma municipality outside of Skopje. And yeah, I'm so excited to be here. I did want to mention, I sent you all an email yesterday, just reaching out, introducing myself and wanting to offer the opportunity to connect one-on-one. So if I know you all are very busy folks, so just wanted to bring that to your attention if you hadn't seen that already. It's about 5:30. You should have received that. And with that, that is me.
Excellent. Well, Claire, we are very, very excited to have you with us. I think board, you have seen her resume and just hearing her extensive background, I think she is the perfect fit for us to continue to move Skip forward and do so many great things for our communities. So we say welcome. Oh, and Sonari is wanting to know which years you were there. She was an RPCV in, she's in Mongolia.
2010 to 2013.
All right, so not the same overlap, but yeah, welcome.
So, yeah.
Oh, the places you will go, right? Excellent. Okay. Some of you will remember that we usually do introductions for our staff working group and any advisory members that are here as well. But we have changed the platform for this meeting because, and it wasn't me that did it, even I wasn't at the meeting the month that this happened, but we had someone coming in and sharing images that weren't exactly appropriate for any meeting. And so we have changed to a different platform to where the board members are considered as panelists, and then everyone else is considered an attendee. So I just want all of you that are attending as either members of the advisory committee or guests or members of the staff working group that we do value your opinions and your contributions greatly. We just do not value the opinions and the contributions from people who choose to break into our meeting and share some disturbing scenes. So that's why we have changed to this new platform. But I do believe if there are any attendees that have something that they want to share, Dorsal, you are able to promote them to panelists for that, correct?
Yes, that's correct. They just need to raise their hand.
Perfect. Okay. So let me see. I know we have a different agenda than the one that I had up. All right, let's go to review of the agenda. Are there any agenda modifications today? All right, hearing none, then we'll move to item 3, which is the election of the chair and the vice chair. And Dorsal, I will turn that over to you.
I think I'm also going to take a crack at this one.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Claire.
No,
I'm
you're fine.
trying to figure out which agenda I'm on because I know there were some changes and the annotated agenda that I had is a little bit different. So my apologies.
Okay, no worries. So according to Skip's bylaws, the officers of the board shall consist of a chair and a vice chair, elected from the appointed members of the board by a majority vote. The election of the officers is supposed to take place at the first meeting, the first regular meeting of each calendar year. So we're doing that today. And so my understanding is there has been one nomination or one person throwing their hat in the ring for chair. And that is Mayor Backus. And I wanted to ask if there were any other nominations at this time for the office of the chair. All right, hearing none. So can I have a motion for the nomination?
I move that we reappoint Mayor Backus as chair for 2023.
Second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. All right, the motion passes and Mayor Backus is reelected a chair. Congratulations.
Thank you all very much.
Yes, Councilmember Buxton had her hand up.
Yes.
No, I was actually looking for the celebratory. I clicked the wrong, I was going to put the little confetti in my corner and I clicked the wrong button. Congratulations, Nancy.
Thank
I
you.
think they're
Tracy, very
gone.
much.
I don't think we have them anymore.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I don't see it. I just, where the raise hand thing that usually lets you have choices, it just is a hand raise. So
That's what we had to come to since we had uninvited
had to-
guests.
yeah.
So we are now, we also need to appoint a vice chair. And so I know that Mayor Ralph has put her name into the table for that as well. And at this time, are there any other nominations? All right, hearing none. Can I have a motion for Mayor Ralph?
So
Move
moved.
to reappoint. No.
Second.
All right, all those in favor of reappointing Mayor Ralph to serve as vice chair, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. All right, the motion carries. And congratulations, Mayor Ralph.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations. All right. And thank you all. Thank you for your continued great work on this committee. We have so much more that we are going to be able to accomplish, and it's going to be an exciting year. I mean, just getting to see the funding once it gets approved by all of our respective councils is just going to be amazing that we get to see the work finally coming to something tangible, brick and mortar. All right, we will move on to the approval of the December 16th, 2022 minutes. That should be attachment A in your packets. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Any corrections? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of the approval of the December 16th, 2022 minutes, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say no. All right, motion passes. Okay, moving on. Under old business, we have the Affordable Housing Inventory update. And so in partnership with 5 SKIP member jurisdictions, SKIP, as you're aware, received funding through the Department of Commerce Housing Action Plan Implementation Grants, HAPPY grants, to create an inventory of regulated and unregulated affordable housing across South King County. And so I'm not quite sure, Claire or Dorsal, am I turning it over to you, Claire? It looks like you unmuted, so I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. So in June of 2022, SKIP entered into a contract with Burke Consultants to develop a naturally occurring affordable housing inventory, or NOAA, as you likely have heard it called. So today we're gonna get an update from Kevin Gifford from Burke, and I will turn it over to Kevin.
Thank you, Claire. Good afternoon, everyone. It's really great to see you all and see a few familiar faces in the crowd, so it's good to see you again. My name's Kevin Gifford. I'm a senior associate at Burke Consulting, and I'm the project manager for this effort. My background's in land use planning, as well as spatial analysis and data science. So this was a really exciting project for us to work on with SKIP, in terms of looking at all the data that was out there and trying to put together a tool that was going to be really useful for your efforts going forward. So we do have an update on the project. I'm just going to share my screen here real quick and run through a brief slide deck. And can everyone see that?
Yes.
Great, thank you. All right, so just the agenda for this today is just give you a quick overview of the project and go through the work plan, and then a brief discussion of each of the program components that go into this overall project, specifically looking at the income restricted housing inventory, which is going to be essentially the regulated component of this, the naturally occurring affordable housing analysis that Claire just talked about, and then an overview of the dashboard and database editing tool that we're going to be making available to SKIP jurisdiction members going forward. And then we'll close out with a quick status update on each of those components and talk briefly about next steps. And obviously, would be more than happy to answer any additional questions that you have. So first of all, just looking at sort of the overall project and what the goals of this effort are, the housing inventory monitoring tool is really intended to support SKIP's mission going forward to, be able to quantify what are the local affordable housing opportunities in your area and track your progress toward achieving affordable housing goals. Also to identify naturally occurring affordable housing that is unregulated and a lot of times untracked. And because these housing units often house residents who are at risk of displacement, because with all of the rising housing costs in our area, housing that is renting for below market rate is at prime risk for being displaced. And then also to help support the development of strategies for preservation of affordable housing stock and mitigation of displacement. So with those goals in mind, our work plan and deliverables are specifically to collect as much data as we can on income restricted housing in your service area and create a database. Then also analyze regional property and rental data so that we can document market rate affordable housing that is known to be affordable, as well as identify additional properties that we think are likely to also have naturally occurring affordable housing units in them. And then finally, develop the interactive dashboard tool so that SKIP members can map and summarize the inventory data in a way that works for them and support their local planning initiatives. And also one of the key components here is including editing capabilities so that there can be ongoing monitoring and tracking of your housing stock as it changes over time. So first of all, the income restricted housing inventory, this is one of the big components of this, and we are working in partnership with King County DCHS on this, and I see several folks from DCHS in the audience today, so great to see you, and thanks for coming. One of the things that we realized pretty early on in this process as we were getting our data collection strategy together is that King County already does a lot of this data collection on a regular basis in terms of aggregating information from affordable housing providers, and they already maintain their own database. And so one of the things we did is we reached out to them about the possibility of having an ongoing partnership here for data sharing, because they have an established process to regularly collect and process and clean this data so that they have a county-wide data set. And we talked through the implications of being able to share that with SKIP, and they have agreed to provide database extracts for the SKIP service area that we can use in our tool. So one of the advantages here is that by centralizing that data collection through King County, it uses this established partnership with affordable housing providers, and it really streamlines future updates. So this allows us to kind of set things up in a way that on an annual basis, we can go back to King County and talk about when's that data extract ready. They can give us a new version of it, and we can update, we can build the tool so that it's relatively straightforward for SKIP to continually update the tool, the dashboard tool, with King County's updated data. So just in terms of what's included in that inventory, it aggregates data from properties that require income verification, and it's collected directly from those providers. And so we get the project location, we get the number of affordable units by income level. Also, we get the tenure between renter and owner households, the year that the project went into service, and then also the final affordability term. Essentially, when does that affordability requirement expire? And this is something that we really wanted to highlight in this, because it lets SKIP jurisdiction members know when there's an upcoming expiration of an affordability requirement. And that way, if they want to know where that property is and they want to get information about it, they can potentially investigate or come up with steps for any intervention that they might want to take. Supplementing this, we're also putting together a local incentive-based affordable housing inventory database to work in concert with King County's database. One of the things that King County has started asking jurisdictions for within the last, I believe it's the last 2 years or so, is for basically information on the number of affordable units that have been created through local incentive programs or affordability covenants, as opposed to being provided by a local housing authority that's being subsidized. And so they've been asking for that data. And one of the things that came up in conversations with the working group of the local planners is that sometimes they want to be able to track the affordable housing that's being produced in their community under these different incentive programs by specific incentive programs, and be able to get really detailed about how many units are produced through a particular incentive program, and being able to try out different strategies at the local level. And so our conclusion here is that what would be a really good opportunity is to build a tool as part of our dashboard for local jurisdictions to document those projects as they are permitted, capture that detailed information, and then we can provide essentially just a data processing tool that will roll that information up into the format that King County uses for their database. And this can provide a unified reporting structure back to King County whenever they ask for this information every year. And so this really kind of can help streamline the process of getting that data back to King County for their purposes, while allowing the local jurisdictions to track that information by the individual incentive programs. And then the NOAA, naturally occurring affordable housing analysis component of this. So first of all, just some definitions here. When we talk about NOAA, it's number one, just what is it? It's privately owned, and it's unsubsidized. The asking rent is affordable to households earning less than some defined percentage of the area median income, adjusted for household size. We're generally kind of right now kind of looking at rents that are affordable to people in the 50 to 60% of AMI income bracket, but there is some flex there in terms of how that gets reported. Obviously, there are fewer properties. You're going to see fewer properties renting at those lower income thresholds. So that can create some challenges for the analysis. And the other key component here is that these are also properties that are not currently subject to affordability covenants or other incentive programs, which would be covered in the other database. And the purpose of monitoring these properties is, as we kind of discussed earlier, is that you want to track the opportunities for affordable housing in your community that are at risk from loss from redevelopment. It's, I mean, it's as easy as a landlord choosing to raise their rent, that these units can essentially go away and no longer be available. And if they are attractive from a development standpoint, a lot of these units can quickly disappear through redevelopment projects. And that can result in the displacement of vulnerable populations. So one of the things that's of key importance to this effort is identifying the possible properties where this may occur, so that jurisdictions can target their strategies for intervention and preservation of that housing stock. And this also allows us to, this analysis allows us to better understand the spatial distribution of affordable housing opportunities in the South King County region. And so to do this, we've been taking a look at a wide range of data sources. We're specifically looking at detailed property profiles that include information on rents and vacancies, specifically from third-party data vendors who survey these properties. The drawback of that sort of data is that it's very narrowly focused, but it gives us, we think, a representative sample of those types of properties in the region. We then supplement that by looking at several other rental property databases, among them CoStar, which some of you may be familiar with. It has a wider coverage of properties, but there is slightly less reliable data there, but in terms of individual rents for units. But it does give us some sense of whether we're heading in the right direction, allows us to sort of verify and ground truth our efforts a little bit. And then finally, we look at the county's assessor's data to get a sense of all properties in the area. Obviously, there's no rent data in there, but we use this to derive property level characteristics for the analysis. So essentially, the outline of the analysis is it kind of in two steps. First of all, we identify known NOAA properties. And by known properties, what I mean is information on properties where a survey has been conducted, there are verified rents on a per unit basis, and we can tell that these meet the criteria for the affordability threshold that has been set for the analysis. We then cross-reference that surveyed rental data with the county assessor records so that we can identify other characteristics of the property and use this to help build up a statistical model that looks at the correlation between property characteristics and these affordability and the affordability status. We then apply that statistical model to the assessor records to estimate the likelihood that NOAA units are present in other properties that have not been surveyed. So as a result, the NOAA inventory essentially consists of these two different groups of properties. We have the known inventory units, where we can say these are definitely, these properties definitely contain naturally occurring affordable housing units based on the survey data. And then here's a separate population of properties that we have identified in our model that we think are likely to potentially contain NOAA. And that portion of the analysis is really there for local jurisdictions to then do additional data collection to reach out to those property owners if they feel necessary and help guide their efforts for intervention and preservation. So we will provide, the database tool will provide detailed information on the individual properties where the survey data has been collected, but where we're making a prediction, obviously we can't comment on individual rents because that hasn't been verified. So essentially we're providing a probability score that lets jurisdictions look at which properties we feel are most likely, and then they can further tailor their efforts going forward. And then finally, this all gets rolled into our dashboard and database editing tool. So we combine all of the process data that we've been talking about so far into a series of databases. And this ties into an interactive map of property locations, which also includes dynamic summary charts for data exploration. And this also allows for automated reports and summarization of information in different geographic areas. So this is also done in order to help the local planners and script jurisdictions to be able to get to the end of the year, and they need to make a report to council and be able to run reports to say, okay, here's a summary of all of the income restricted units that are located in our community, broken out by affordability level and size and all of those different characteristics that are included in the database. And then ultimately, there's a separate data editing module that we've created here that will allow local jurisdictions to continue editing some of these data points over time as known changes occur. So for example, if they take a look at one of the NOAA properties that was identified as likely, and they collect additional information about it, they can go into the database, update that record, and now have more detailed information going forward. Or conversely, if they know that that property, if they've excluded it because they know it is no longer available on the market, they can remove it. And also for, as I discussed earlier, the local incentive-based affordable housing, they can add units to that database as they're permitted in real time, and then be able to run reports on that at the end of whatever period they see fit. And then just here's a couple of screenshots showing you sort of the status of the current draft of the dashboard tool. The charts that are in here are not completely final yet. We're still working on finalizing some of the data inputs, and as a result, some of these may change just a little bit. But essentially, this is the layout that we've been working with, and we're looking to push this out for user testing within the next few weeks. And essentially, this allows users to explore through the map on the left. They can zoom in, zoom out, look at specific jurisdictions. There are also a series of filters that can be applied, so they can take a look at. So for example, on the left there, you can see there's a list of the jurisdictions. So if somebody's specifically interested in just the properties that are located in Auburn or Buren or any of the jurisdictions here, they can select those filters. The map and all of the charts will then immediately update so that you'll get summary statistics just for those properties. And then at any time, you can also select individual properties on the map and get a detailed profile, such as you see in the little pop-up window that's inside the map frame there. So this way, the user can essentially get all the detailed information they want, but then they can also summarize that by various areas. And we're working on functionality to be able to export summaries of each of these charts for additional analysis if they want. And then this is a screenshot of the editing tool. So you see the map looks very much the same, but the idea here is that when you want to make changes to a particular record, you would go into this view and essentially select a feature, and you can see on the left side of the screen there, it brings up a form with all of the different data fields that are in the database, and those can be edited and changed, or records can also be added and deleted. If you add a new record, the same form will pop up, and the user can simply just fill it out and add the information for the new unit that's that they're putting in. And so this again is, one of the things that we're going to have to work at through the user testing is, whether this is the right level of detail that people feel comfortable with, and how those workflows are going to go. And one of the things that that's included in our scope of work is to provide very detailed guidance documents on how these tools are to be used, and how to basically maintain really good data hygiene so that this database stays useful, that we don't clutter it up with a lot of useless information, or that nothing gets accidentally deleted going forward, so that it can remain a tool for Skip to use for years to come. So in terms of a status update, looking at our data collection analysis efforts, we're in coordination with DCHS at King County right now. The last word we had from them is that they're finalizing the current database update process, so that we're expecting a final data extract, hopefully very soon, that we can roll into this. Right now, we're using a testing data set for this, and we'll go ahead and roll that out for user testing with that. The NOAA analysis initial modeling is complete. We're working on some additional analysis to capture smaller rental properties that may not show up, that may not have as good coverage in those larger data vendor sets. So specifically looking at things like duplexes and triplexes, small scale apartments and things like that. And then we're also still working on a little bit of QA/QC of the model results and fine tuning some of the parameters for that statistical model. But those should hopefully be resolved here in the next couple of weeks. The review draft of the dashboard tool that is just showed you is just about complete, and we're anticipated to begin user testing here in the next week or two, so that the local planners can get their hands on it, give us some feedback, and we can move ahead with finalizing that. So in terms of next steps, like I said, we're going to publish that review draft of the dashboard tool so we can get the testing started and complete the QA/QC of the model results here in the next couple of weeks. And then for February, we're hoping to incorporate the final inventory data from King County, update the dashboard and mapping tool based on the feedback from our user testing, and then prepare the final technical documentation and user guide that we can hand off to Skip. And then by March, we would present our final deliverables to the board here, and then also begin the handoff of the technical assets to Skip and the City of Auburn. Burke is currently building all of this in our own ArcGIS environment, but for ongoing maintenance, we would be handing this over to the GIS department at the City of Auburn. So we'll be working with their technical staff on getting that set up and on that migration process. So that's all I have in terms of the updates, and thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time.
Well, that's exciting work, Kevin. Thank you for going through that with us. Do we have any questions or comments from our board? Let's see. Let's start with Sonari, and then Dana, and then Tracy.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, super excited to see this and definitely appreciate the partnership with our team and the way that this is going to help kind of consolidate some information across the Skip cities. I think this is what we mean when we talk about collaboration and collaboration dividends, that, you know, each individual city isn't going to have to track those incentive units on their own. It's going to be a tool that all can use. Really appreciate that. I think one of the questions I have is, when we have this information, particularly on that naturally occurring affordable housing side, what's our plan to develop a strategy on what to do with it? And I ask with that, I know that's like kind of the next step, but given the very open public records laws that we have here, there just feels like this risk of, we've created a data set that is really valuable to somebody who actually wants to buy those properties and flip them. And if we don't have the proactive strategy together on our side about what we're trying to do with the information in order to preserve affordability, then we're a little bit behind the ball. So just encouraging us to prioritize in our work planning, like the next step, and really being ahead of that. You know, I think even like our colleagues in Burien are probably a little bit ahead of the rest of us because they have that notice of intent to sell policy, which is helpful to kind of pair with this information. But like, what are we all kind of doing on a policy and planning front to know, once we have this, what are the proactive steps that we could take, and also looking for how that shows up in staff's work plans to like kind of help produce menus of options and things like that.
Yeah, that's a great question, Sonari. I know Auburn has similar, the notice, required notice of intent to sell, where they have to provide, I can't recall what it is right now, but it's a significant number of days if they are going to sell. So they need to notify the tenant. I think that's a really good question for us to make sure that we are staying on top of. And Kevin, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you do, I'd love to hear those.
Yeah, it is a delicate question. And Sonari, thanks for bringing that up. I know, I've heard Michaela Daffern at DCHS also raise that concern, earlier in our conversations. It is, on one hand, I think, we do want to be sensitive to that. So I think there are a couple of things that we can do from a technical standpoint to try to mitigate that risk a little bit. And some of that is with like the level of information that we share. I think right now for testing, we're kind of, with our initial data sets, we're kind of like, we're considering all of it. But in terms of what ultimately ends up in the tool, what ends up in the final database, I think there's some room for discussion about what attributes get included. I think one of the other things that we sort of have discussed internally at Burke, and as we were developing this analysis, and we haven't really presented that back to Skip or any of the planners from the local jurisdictions yet, is this idea that rather than trying to give every property, like in our model that we've identified, giving it a thumbs up, thumbs down, like yes, this is affordable, or no, it's not, because number one, that does imply a certain level of false precision, right? We don't know that for sure, and it's very labor intensive to verify that. So what we kind of looked at is like, well, rather than that, we're going to essentially provide a score. We can essentially say like, score from, 0 to 1 or 1 to 100, however you want to format it, of here's how likely we think it is that there are at least one unit in this property is going to meet the criteria. And so as a result, it's not something that is like, hey, here are the top 10 most affordable properties in the region, go scoop those up and flip them. It does still require a little additional effort to say, like, okay, well, anybody who would be wanting to use this as a guide would still have to figure out, like, okay, how much of those units actually renting for, how many of them are, what is the actual property value right now, and do a bunch of additional legwork. So I think that, obviously there's a tension there, because that can also limit the usefulness of that data to Skip, and so, which we don't want to do. So I think there's definitely room for conversation about how we present that. And I agree, we need to be sensitive to, again, given the open data laws and like the fact that this could get requested. And I think one of the things that so I think that's something we can talk a bit more about parameters, and we can also talk about sort of what information is included, because again, we are operating with, there's a prediction, and then we do have this inventory of known properties, right? And that's essentially something that, as part of our budget from Skip under the contract, we purchase data from a vendor. So in theory, like basically anybody can go buy that data. So it's kind of already out there. So in that sense, it's like, well, okay, we don't want to call attention to this and like advertise, but at the same time, that data is already available. And I would imagine that any real estate developer who's looking to just go out and scoop up properties to flip would be able to afford what we paid for that data. So, I definitely not trying to dismiss it and make light of it, but I feel like part of this is already kind of out there. I think it's just a matter of then we just need to be very careful how we discuss the modeled results and how we're gonna go from there. But yeah, definitely would and agree that like if there should be a strategy, if the group wants to come up with a strategy first to make sure that's already ready to go and in play, I agree that would be a big benefit, just to make sure that you're kind of ahead of the curve.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Tracy.
I think Dana was before me. Did you still want to go? Okay.
I will follow you, not a problem.
Okay.
You flipped around on my screen. My apologies.
Oh, no worries. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. So this seems like a fabulous tool moving into our comp plans here in 2024. And then, we're still in the middle of our housing action plan, developing our housing action plan. It seems like this would be a great tool. I'm guessing that it would be available to our cities who are developing those, though I think some of our cities have actually completed their housing action plans. What do we think that would be valuable, and how much impact do you think it would have on amending or rethinking some of the work that we've done?
I think that I think one of the things that our office actually has off the top of my head, I can't say which Skip jurisdictions we've done housing action plans for, but we did quite a few of them during that big initial rush that came out a couple of years ago. And so I think one of the things that has always been I think the data on being able to say, like, these are the numbers of units in the community that are actually affordable. It's verified, you know exactly what income groups those units are affordable to, I think is an excellent addition. I mean, because that's always been something that's a little tougher to get at, right? And I think in terms of looking at the housing needs analyses and the HAPs, being able to build your strategies, like knowing where you start from, I think that's an excellent addition. I don't necessarily think that it would, for the jurisdictions that have already finished their HAPs, I don't necessarily think that this new information would require like an immediate update, unless you see something in there that surprises you. If there's something like, that you go through, it's like, oh, well, that's, that's not as many units as we thought we had, or that income distribution looks a little bit different than we were assuming, then maybe it'd be good to take another look at that. But I think the idea being that this can help inform your, as you're looking, if you've set targets for yourself and you have policy goals for yourself in those HAPs, I think this can be a good way to help inform how you're making progress over the years, because as I mentioned, the tool's set up to be able to run summaries of, okay, here's how many units you currently have, here's how many went online in a given date range, here's how many of like each different building type and by and by each income level, so that you can kind of see where the holes are. So for example, if you've got a bunch of units that are affordable kind of at the higher end that are more like in the like 50 to 80% of AMI range, but you're getting nothing at the bottom end, then that can help you tweak your policy priorities going forward. Did that answer your question, Councilmember? Or is there something in there that I
Well,
didn't
well,
say?
it did. It was kind of a two-part, depending on your answer. And then I'm not sure about is that an okay thing? Well, for one, what you said, it was going online kind of in a test format. And do you feel comfortable with the data? And if that's true, are we comfortable allowing our cities to use this data, the SKIP partners to use this data for not just specific SKIP purposes, but if they wanted to use it as a tool or resource while developing our housing action plan, is that appropriate?
In terms of, all right, so in terms of the testing phase, you're right. Right now we're working on the testing draft. The data is not final yet, particularly the no analysis. We're still fine tuning that, and we're waiting for the final data extract from King County. So what we have now I would say do not analyze that. That is not final. But by the time we hand this off, then that would be data that we have full confidence in. In terms of sharing that for other uses, I think our understanding from the beginning of the project was that this was, even though it was specifically trying to inventory affordable housing, that's all part of the overall mandate of local planners. And if you want to use that for other planning goals and to inform just making your communities better, we think that's all to the good. And we would leave the ultimate decision on data sharing to SKIP and the jurisdictions themselves. But we think that's a perfectly fine use of it.
Okay, thank you. Dana.
Thank you. Kevin, really appreciate the presentation and the work that's gone into this. I strongly believe it is going to validate the conversations that we as jurisdictions have been having around affordable housing. I know that I think that this is very timely in that we are in the throes of a legislative session where there are a lot of assumptions being made that I just don't think are correct. I can tell you that Nancy and I spent a lot of time, I would say in Olympia, but on screens in Olympia last year, really defending sort of what we know to be true about our communities, and that some of these policies that are being brought forward that are this idea of one solution fits all would really be very damaging to our communities because of the amount of naturally occurring affordable housing, and then the highlighting of, oh, look, now you can put 6 things where there was 1 or 2 units that were affordable that are now significantly more expensive. So I am excited about having a tool that will help us tell the story. Because saying it doesn't always have the same impact as having a screen to point to, a graph, a chart, or that that data. So I'm very much looking forward to that. I was in a conversation in a meeting just before this where the statement was, well, if you do this, then we'll be able to stop some of those things that are being said about South County. And I'm like, but none of those things that are being said about South County are actually true. So we're already doing all of those things. Being able to have this tool to point to that. And I think it's important too. We all spent money on these housing action plans. Commerce gave us the money for the grant to do this, and allowing us some time to bring those plans to fruition is really important. And so again, very timely given the conversations that are being had in Olympia. So I'm excited to have access to the data to get in there and really dig down into it.
Yeah, we did receive some requests from some of the planners in the working group about being able to access the data directly, are they able to be able to download the data and be able to pull that into their own GIS system and run additional analyses with that. So that's definitely something that as we do the tech migration to the city of Auburn, making sure that their GIS staff is that we're coordinating on that so that that's available, because we don't want to clog this tool up with just everything in the kitchen sink, right? We can add additional information for context, and we're happy to do that. But I think that obviously, again, you're right, that story, that narrative is important, because the facts matter, but at the same time, we also need to be very honest about what we don't know. And I think that's one of the things we're trying to balance in this process is being clear about what we do know and being clear about what We don't know, but the data suggests. And so I think like being very clear on that, and I think that's one of the things we want to make very clear in our guidance and like final documentation, right, is that certain thing, how the data should be used. And I think one of the things that we want to be very clear about with the NOAA analysis is that obviously some of it, like I said, is documented. It's a known quantity. It can change. Like I said, all it takes is one landlord to say, well, I'm raising my rents this year, and who knows how many of those units disappear. But this, for the projections, it's like this is we think, right? And so it's, I think we want to make sure that jurisdictions don't rely on that number and say like, oh, well, we've got, this many units. Like, well, okay, let's go with what we know. But then these are the areas where there's more work required, or where you might have the opportunity to say like, all right, well, let's look at where those are concentrated and what's our zoning like there, and take a look at our development regulations and things of that nature. But you're right. I think the more facts that we can bring out there, the better we can plan for the future. So we're happy to help with that.
My hope is that this tool allows us to continue to have those jurisdictional level conversations, because I really think there's a trend to, oh, it should be whatever you're doing should be statewide, or somehow somebody outside of a jurisdiction just knows better because we don't know. And so having this tool really does, I think, help us in those conversations about like, this is what we think, we are working towards this. This is, so I'm excited about what it brings to the table.
I agree, Dana. Data validates our story and our beliefs in the not supporting a one-size-fits-all approach. And I was in Olympia last week for Mayor's Exchange with the Association of Washington Cities, and then the following day, some of us had an opportunity to meet with Governor Inslee, and we were talking about affordable housing, homelessness, drugs, all of the things that you would expect that we're going to be talking about. And did bring up just that, about this can't be a one-size-fits-all approach, and where we have naturally occurring affordable housing, there is currently in any of the bills, there's no guarantee that it remains affordable housing. And that's our biggest concern, and how it pushes people out of neighborhoods, the displacement, even while it's being built, and making sure, the biggest thing is to make sure that there are no unintended consequences from good intentions. So I think this data is going to be incredibly beneficial, not just for us in this working group, but for our cities. So any other questions for Kevin? Any comments from anyone? Well, thank you, Kevin. We look forward to more. It's really exciting to have this kind of data that's going to be available to us, and we'll figure out ways with the public records of making sure that that we provide it if it's asked for. But as you said, anybody that's really going to be out there looking for that data probably can afford it, and because it's going to cost something for them to pay for it from one of our organizations as well. All right.
Thank you for having me, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Great. Thank you. All right. On to our next bit of business. Under new business is the appointment of new advisory board members. And the data from the information on those three should be at the end of your agenda. There are 3 new people that are being recommended, and the intention for staff to review the process. So I am going to, am I turning that over to you again, Claire, for an update on the individuals that are being recommended?
Apologies for the confusion. On this one, we're going to turn it over to Dorsal.
All right, Dorsal, it's all you.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you, everyone. So I'm really excited to be here today to start off the new year with adding some new knowledge and some new energy to the advisory board. Currently, the SKHHP Advisory Board has 9 members. We are required, as ILA explains, to have at least 12 members to make up the board. board. So the 3 candidates that we're bringing before you today would bring us back up to the 12-member requirement that we have. Today, we're bringing forward 1 community member and 2 organizations that would be bringing organizational representation to the board. While undertaking the task of recruiting, I utilized both my experience as a former advisory board member and conversations that I had been having with current advisory board members to try and find areas of knowledge that were essential to add to our team. This was something that especially came out of the Housing Capital Fund review, where we were able to identify gaps in our knowledge that we really want to have for the 2023 iteration. So the slate before you today reflects that diverse range of experience and expertise. It will, when confirmed, it'll add an extensive amount of housing policy and housing finance knowledge, and it will also add an important voice of firsthand experience of somebody who overcame housing displacement and homelessness here in South King County themselves. Each candidate was interviewed by myself and members of the advisory board, and all 3 were determined to be the best fits for SKIP moving forward in 2023. Just quickly to introduce them, we have Tina coming to us as the organizational representative of the Verity Credit Union. There she is serving as the Chief Lending Officer. And she has been working directly with not just housing finance, but also credit reform to factor in rental rates into mortgage determinations. And then we're also bringing forward you, Kathy. Kathy is currently working at Mary's Place and is a resident of South King County who's bringing that firsthand experience of overcoming housing displacement and homelessness to now be on a path where she's using that knowledge to help other families. And then we also are bringing forward Patience, the executive director of the Housing Development Consortium. And this would bring the Housing Development Consortium as an organization to SKIP. Prior to serving as the executive director, she headed up she was the director of government relations and policy there. The HDC was instrumental in helping to get SKIP started, and she is a regional leader when it comes to housing, both the East Side Housing Roundtable. She co-chairs the Puget Sound Region Council Regional Transit-Oriented Development Advisory Committee, and is chair of the Seattle Redistricting Commission. Really proud to have them here for you.
Excellent. Thank you, Dorsal. Are there any questions that Dorsal can answer about any of the 3 candidates? Tracy.
Wasn't really a question, but I was impressed just reading about it. It looks like Dorsal already said, that I appreciate the diverse expertise, and it looks like really exciting additions. And I'm looking forward to having them aboard, and maybe even hearing from them as like even a special presentation. I mean, it doesn't have to be an hour from each of them, but it would be lovely to hear, for example, about loan products and services that work to increase affordable housing, just to increase our knowledge base here. It just looks like some exciting expertise added to our advisory board. And so thank you.
Agreed, Tracy. Thank you. That's a great idea. We usually invite advisory board members to join us, so be a great opportunity with the newest ones to not just introduce themselves to us, but to share a little bit about that significant background and experience that they're bringing to the advisory board. Great idea. All right. If there are no other questions, I will entertain a motion to approve the slate of candidates for the advisory board. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of the appointment of the slate of candidates to the advisory board, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say no. Motion carries unanimously, and we are excited to have 3 new, very experienced and very valued members of our advisory board. Dorsal, thank you for the work in getting them to this point, and we look forward to meeting. Although we know some of them, we look forward to being able to engage with them more closely. Let's see, what did Bambi saying? Patience, unfortunately, not here to attend as she's kicking off a public safety meeting. I'm relaying her enthusiasm and excitement for serving in collaboration with Skip. Thank you. Appreciate that. And please share with her our excitement for her being part of this and our continued collaboration. All right. Moving on to item number 7, our educational item. The first is our 2023 state legislative preview. We know that the legislature has been in now for 2 weeks, and I think it's a very fast acting group this year. So we wanted to take an opportunity to highlight some of the legislation that's tied to Skip's legislative priorities. And I don't know if it's Dorsal or Claire, but I see that Claire has unmuted, so I'm going to assume that it's Claire. So please take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Backus. So establishing, the legislative priorities was a part of SKIP's 2022 work plan. There was, it sounds like, significant work that you, the executive board, and members of the staff work group put into establishing the legislative priorities. So I think the plan is that each executive board meeting, while legislative session is happening, that we'll come to you and provide a brief update on the alignment of bills that relate to your legislative priorities and any other sort of need to know items. So that's the plan. I also wanted to take a moment and acknowledge Dorsal for his work in tracking the relevant housing bills and preparing this presentation, staying informed with our partners on the latest happenings, and preparing this presentation, and doing this all through the transition of executive managers. So kudos to Dorsal. And so in this presentation, we're going to be highlighting a few bills that do tie to the legislative priorities that you established. And then at the end, we'll have a handful of bills that we just want to make you aware of that are relevant. So with that, Dorsal. And Dorsal, I don't know if you can make we're seeing the upcoming.
Yeah, if you could put it in presentation mode.
On my end, it is showing, so I'm trying to figure it out, because on my end, it's trying to figure out how to reverse it. Did that work?
Yes, it did.
That did, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. But it's also a good way to introduce the fact that there are, even just this morning, somewhere around 20 new bills that were introduced. So I just want to preface this with, this is our best attempt to capture the information, but there's a lot of information. So feel free to let me know if there's things that need to be corrected. And literally while we're talking, some of these things may change. So just very quickly, I wanted to just briefly remind everyone of the legislative priorities. The staff work group and Angela did a significant amount of work putting these together, and then the executive and advisory board a significant amount of work placing them in a format. They were broken down into 3 primary areas. The first one being increasing housing stability and preventing displacement. And our priorities to accomplish that were to establish a statewide rental and vacant property registration program and to provide further funding to support the tenant's right to counsel. Another category was to to provide local affordable housing tools and revenue options. There were a couple of ways we were thinking to accomplish that, including authorizing a local REIT option, amending the surplus land disposition policies, and providing more support, both financially and other resources to help local government planning. And then lastly, but not least, to fund more affordable housing, specifically to fully fund the Washington State Housing Trust Fund, and to ensure that those new funds did not disproportionately impact low-income families that are trying to be supported by it. For our first increasing stability and preventing displacement, there is Senate Bill 5060, which requires the creation of a registry for both rental and vacant housing units. While 5060 does create a registry, it does so by creating a monthly reporting requirement for some types of rental property owners. This monthly requirement potentially creates a significant logistical challenge, and it's potentially going to impact whether or not the bill is able to move forward. Currently, it's still sitting at the 111 committee update. For our local affordable housing tools and revenue options, there is House Bill 1052. Now that expands the property tax exemptions for nonprofit organizations that are currently providing rental housing or mobile home parking space to qualifying households. While it doesn't authorize a new local REIT for affordable housing, it does add nonprofits providing low-income rental housing to the list of entities exempt from paying property tax. Now, we did want to make you aware, and at least as recently as 10 or so this morning, we are aware of 2 bills that are pending. The Affordable Homes Act has components that would create a pathway to create a sustainable funding source for the Housing Trust Fund through a 4% excise tax on the portion of property sales above $5 million. It would also create a new local REIT option and allow cities and counties to impose a 0.25% excise tax on property sales. So potentially the Affordable Homes Act, depending on the final bill form, could address 2 of our categories. And then lastly, there is a lot of talk in our network that there is a land surplus bill or some form of land surplus changes that may be coming, and we will be looking for those as they come. For our last category, funding affordable housing, we've got House Bill 1149 and Senate Bill 5202. These would both authorize the State Finance Committee to issue up to $4 billion in general obligation bonds to finance programs and projects that address housing insecurity. Additionally, Governor Inslee has announced plans for a housing referendum that would fund an additional 5,300 units of housing and 19,000 in the following 3 biennia. The governor's proposal, though, has a number of hurdles to clear, and the referendum itself would have to go before the Washington voters. And then lastly, this has been dubbed as the year of housing, and not even just housing, but it is a very busy session. There's over 1,000 bills between both sides of the legislature. So there's a lot going on. This list by no means captures all of the housing bills that are tied to it. This is just a handful of ones that seem to be some of the more hot topic, a lot more conversation around them. We are currently tracking as many of the bills as we can, and SKIP staff would be happy to provide or acquire any information on any of the bills that are either tied to or not currently tied to our legislative priorities. You can see from this list here, there's quite a few. 1110, middle housing is definitely one that's up for a lot of conversation. As of yesterday, there's Senate Bill 5466 around transit-oriented development, 1111 housing benefit districts. And then there's also a lot of tenant and landlord work being done. 1124 is just one example. And then finally, just want to let everyone know of a few key dates. As Claire mentioned, we will bring updates to the executive board meetings as the session goes. You'll see that February 17th and 24th are the last days for committee reports. So it'll be around the February executive board meeting that we should have a bit more of a clear understanding of where things are, what things likely are to stay in place, and what things didn't make it out of. And then lastly, the 23rd of April is the day that everyone who does this work is desperately trying to survive to. So with that, I'll turn it over to Claire.
Good point on April 23rd, Dorsal.
Yes. Thank you, Dorsal. So that's a lot of information. We wanted to try and consolidate it for you all. And also given that I am new here to this group, and I'm still learning the context and the background to how you navigate these items. One thing I would just kind of propose to you is that I resend the legislative priorities and the bills that tie directly to those, the ones that Dorsal presented, and flag those to our legislative delegates, some of our key partners. I'm not sure if they've received that. I don't, but I do want to remind them. I think either way, it would be really helpful. And then in addition, I did want to flag that Sound Communities reached out this week to ask if SKIP would support House Bill 1111 that is about housing benefit districts. And I'm not sure how familiar you all are with this bill or that concept, but essentially this is another tool in local government's toolbox to opt into this. It sounds like it is a competitive grant process. They're hoping to be able to provide, it sounds like maybe 6 to 8 cities, $30 to $50 million for strategic land banking to ensure mixed income housing and more public control of areas around existing high capacity transit. So within maybe a half mile of that transit. And I know that Hannah is also on the line here. So she has been very involved with this policy topic. So if there are detailed questions, I think she might be able to address those here today. And I also want to let you know that Sound Communities let me know that other folks in support of this bill include our own City of Renton partner jurisdiction here, and the South King County Habitat for Humanity, and then HDC as well, and SHAPE signed on as well. So just want to acknowledge that they did ask us to consider that. And I see that Mirabelle said,
Yeah, Dana.
Thank you. So I was just pulling up the email string on this bill that we have going at the City of Kent. We are supporting it, and the idea behind that is it does give cities another tool to put in our toolbox around this area, but does not come with a mandate or a requirement. And I can tell you that has been one of our biggest tests through this legislative session. Well, this 2 weeks that we've been here is really about wanting to make sure that jurisdictions have tools without taking away the ability to make some of those individual decisions. So the City of Kent is supporting this bill at this point.
Great. Thank you for that, Dana. Does anyone have any questions that I'm sure Hannah can probably answer? Tracy?
Oh, not necessarily. I'm curious as to any other partners jurisdictions supporting this individually. So Kent and Renton are, or does anybody else know of those of us at the table? Who else might be supporting it individually?
I have not heard that Auburn has supported it yet, but I will tell you that Dana Hinman, who does most of our government affairs, has been out this week. Her sister passed away on early Tuesday morning. So we are not as connected right now on some of our legislative issues as we typically would be. Have any other cities supported this yet that are on the call? Okay.
And are we asking the SKIP board to make a recommendation about these specific bills today?
I think because the ask was just on
1111.
Yeah, just from our collaborative partners, proactively reaching out, asking, I did just want to bring that to the board. So entirely up to you how you'd like to proceed.
Ryan?
Thanks, Mayor. So Federal Way has not taken action on this. We were briefed on it, but there was no formal action. I guess my question for the group, and I'm trying to remember in the past when we need to, or when we're asked to take action as a body, have we just taken action on the spot, or I guess I can't remember if it's something that we are able to do on the spot, or do we need to get it on the agenda, have a presentation about it and all that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think honestly, that's one of our challenges, because so many things we do send back to our respective councils for some type of support. That's the problem during the legislative session, is that things move so quickly, we don't always have the benefit of time. And I'm trying to recall, I don't know that we specifically formally endorsed or supported any legislation last year. Dana, Tracy, or Sonari?
Mayor, what you described is kind of my recollection as well, is that many of us, myself included, are hesitant to take action that's not
right,
like in the packet on the agenda ahead of time, because we do need to discuss with our respective city councils or boards, depending on who we report back to.
right.
So this bill may perfectly be great and well, but I don't know if I can take action at this point for any kind of formal skip motion at this point. Not to say that Federal Way is against or anything, but I don't know if I can
Of course.
take part of an action at this time.
Yeah, no, absolutely understand that. And that is one of the challenges that we have. Dana.
I was just going to weigh in on process. And even though, like I said, the City of Kent through our lobbyists has said that we would be supporting it, I feel like the struggle is that for jurisdictions that, for whatever, like you said, you haven't had a chance to go through it, it makes taking a group action challenging. And I don't know, I am very concerned with how fast and furious the legislation is coming. 4 days ago, we were at almost half as many, or we were halfway to the number of bills that have come before us all of last session in the first week. So right. I didn't say that very eloquently, but there is a lot. And
it's fast.
It's fast. And so I don't know, as a group, short of something that like specifically aligns with our legislative parties to the T, and then giving board members the opportunity to go back and at least discuss it with even their human services or policy analyst group. I feel like it's hard for us to take any sort of action, and I don't want to set precedents on that. So I struggle a little bit with putting anybody in that position.
Right. Thank you. Sonari.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same position as everyone else, and just the timeliness of by the time we went and talked to anyone about it, and then we don't meet again for another month, you're past like a cutoff or two at that point. So it's kind of moot. I would say the way we've dealt with this, the Affordable Housing Committee meetings, is exactly what Dorsal just did, is to have a sense of our general priorities going into a session, try to highlight for shared awareness bills that are coming up that align with those priorities, because not every jurisdiction has the opportunity to zero in on the details and the potential impact of every housing bill. I was just looking at my tracker. I have 34 housing bills so far that we've taken a look at. And so for this to be a shared awareness space helps us do the individual action within our jurisdictions and to say, hey, can you take another look at that one? Because I heard about it at a skip meeting, as opposed to trying to be nimble enough to endorse something mid-session. I just don't think it's feasible.
Right. And I'm sure most of you know, but just in case you don't, the Association of Washington Cities, AWC, has a weekly call every Friday. I missed it today, but every Friday at 12:30, from 12:30 to 1:45. And they're going to talk about obviously more than just affordable housing, but that's always a great call to get on, because you've got some dedicated lobbyists that are down there focusing on the details and keeping us informed. They also send out a weekly briefing sheet. So if you're not getting those, let us know and we'll make sure to get you that information. Ryan?
Thank you. I feel like every time I go after Sonari, I feel like I say a very similar thing to what she just said. But yeah,
Great
my thoughts exactly as far as the timing goes. It would be, we need to find a way that honestly that we can empower ourselves to take action on stuff like this, because things are going to come up, bills are going to change throughout the session. And so to me, and I would never obviously ask anyone to vote on something if they don't feel comfortable with it, then absolutely do not, vote to support. I would love to get us to, yes, this is a bill that did exist last session. Renton was one of the pilots for it last session. I don't recall what Skip's position was on it, if we had one, and I don't know that the Brain Trust is still here to recall that specific bill. Because if we did, it would be great to just so we could reinforce what that position was. Because my belief is the only substantive change, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that instead of having pilot jurisdictions, it now opens it up to volunteers. And the reason I would be comfortable in any capacity, not just knowing my city supporting it, is that it doesn't require a city to do something, because I would certainly not. If I was going to put anyone in a spot where like, oh, we have this unfunded mandate coming back at us now, that certainly wouldn't be great. But knowing that it is an opt-in system, I think this bill has a lot of potential. If we could get to yes, I would love that. But I also understand if folks don't feel comfortable.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. You're right. It does make it a little bit more tenable when it's not something that's being mandated. That one's always going to be a struggle for any of us, because none of us on this call that I've heard enjoy a mandate, especially if it's an unfunded mandate. Okay, it doesn't appear from the comments that I've heard that a majority of people are comfortable taking a vote on supporting this. I would encourage each of you to take it back to your cities and see what the sense is. At some point, I think what we might have done in the past, trying to recall, but I know that I have written letters on behalf of Skip in support of not necessarily legislation, but in support of projects and other things, if we were to hear back from each of the organizations that it was something that they were comfortable with or that their respective cities could support. So we might want to consider something like that in this environment, but meeting once a month in this very dynamic environment isn't going to allow us to do much good in supporting some really great legislation and definitely opposing some really bad legislation. might be worth us looking back at our bylaws. Dorsal and Claire, if you could kind of take a look back on those and give us some updates or advice on what we can and can't do. I do not have those memorized, sorry. But I think it is something that we might want to talk about. If there's not anything in our bylaws, then it might be something that we want to talk about for the future. And I think that would probably need to be going back to our respective councils to approve that, because it would change the way we are acting. So let's take a look at the bylaws and then see how we can move forward on that. Tracy?
An interesting conversation, and no matter what, I'm going to go back to our legislative advocates and staff and talk about this and a few of my colleagues and get an opinion whether we do anything at all, if we ever talk about this again here at this table. But just in case we do, if you do come up with something, I would be open, even up to a little over a week or 2 weeks ahead of time. If you find that in our bylaws it allows something and you come up with a short draft and send it around to us and bring it back to, if this bill is still alive next time we meet, and that if it would be advantageous and we all come back and said, yeah, we talked to the powers that be or the people we needed to. I mean, it's a slim chance, but if it's still alive and we feel strongly enough about it, and if we've all done a little bit of footwork, and you already have a draft letter for us that you've written, I would be willing to make it. I know I'm already going to do my homework anyway, so I just thought I would put that on the table.
Great. Thank you, Tracy. Were there any other pieces of legislation that any of you wanted to highlight? I think is it 1110? That's the missing middle bill. I wanted to share with you some of the comments that Jeff Tate, our planning director, wrote about that one, and it became part of our public comment. Let me see if I can find it. Basically, here we go. Nope, that one's not it either. I thought I had it up. My apologies. Here we go. So in the legislation for 1110, still concern, it's not clear if the requirement to allow 4 or 6 units on a residential lot remains subject to underlying density, or if this trumps the density. And the legislation remains silent on how to address the fact that major transit stops will change over time and how a city is supposed to respond to those changes. This is important given that we're not allowed to require parking within 1/2 mile of a major transit stop, and we are required to allow 6 units on each lot. So if that changes over time, what does that do to our own local guidance? And then he also said, I also believe that building regulatory mandates around the presence of a major transit stops results in a massive shift in zoning authority away from cities and over to transit providers. So that was one that I had not thought about, but it is spot on, because then we would be at the mercy of where transit is going to go in how we zone our cities. So just wanted to share those with you in case you hadn't thought about those, and just wondering if anyone else has any thoughts on any of the legislation that we heard about today. No, okay. Ryan.
It's an interesting thought on the transit agencies sort of deciding. The only thing I'll push back on that a little bit is I think that's still dictated in large part by the underlying zoning, right? They're not going to go where there's not density in the first place. Now, I mean, it's still a bit of a chicken and egg problem. I get that, but where the routes go ultimately is driven by housing at the end of the day, I would say.
Well, I don't know that that's necessarily true. I sit on the Sound Transit Board, and that's not necessarily It's not necessarily around housing. Some of the
jobs.
transit and jobs. It's around jobs. Yeah. Okay, other comments or any other legislation that you wanted to talk through? Okay. Dorsal and Claire, thank you for that. This is going to be a fast and furious legislative session. And as you said, there's going to be a lot around affordable housing, as there should be. But we need to be vigilant in what we are supporting, what we're not at our individual cities, as well as members of this board. Claire.
Thank you. I just wanted to get clarification about one thing I did propose that I don't know that I got. I want to make sure I understand about sending our legislative priorities out. Is that something the board is supportive of? I just want to make sure I'm following your direction. And I can the bills that Dorsal highlighted that do tie to the priorities, is that something you're also open to me pursuing in terms of highlighting that for our legislative delegates? Or should we be quiet on that front because we don't necessarily have alignment, like the discussion that was had with House Bill 1111? And thank you for your patience with me as I'm learning your style. I'm learning. It's going to take some time for me to understand each of your priorities and your expectations. So thank you.
Yeah, no, you're coming in, Claire, with a little bit of a disadvantage that it is during session and getting to know all of us and the style of this committee at the same time. So I commend you for your willingness to even do that. So Dana, let's see if you had some comments on that, and then we'll.
Yeah, I will. I'm perfectly fine with sending out the legislative agenda. We've all voted on that. It's been vetted, I think, collectively as a group. I am a little concerned about weighing in or tying it to specific pieces of legislation, given that the devil is in the details. And so at a high level, the title of the legislation can be in perfect alignment, but when you start looking at it, I like the missing middle conversation. I think that we're all very supportive of figuring that out, but I will tell you there's things in some of that legislation that causes me huge anxiety. And so the balance then becomes like what we're doing as individual cities and offering as alternatives or fixes or support, pro and con to specific pieces of legislation. It could potentially be in conflict, and I worry. Last session we had some. This is a Kent specific thing, but I know it happens in other cities. Like the city itself was weighing in opposition, and then individual council members weighing in support, and it creates confusion. And so I'm concerned about Skip weighing in support, and then Kent saying, "Well, we've got these issues," and then having somebody be able to hold up. But as this organization, you said yes. So that's where I have some heartburn.
The devil is definitely in the details on a lot of this, but maybe just by a show of thumbs, if you're good with Claire sending out our legislative priorities to all of our respective legislative districts. Okay, we did do something easily for you, Claire, on this first meeting.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
Yes. Any other thoughts on legislation? All right, well, we are moving right along today. So we are at item 8, and that's updates or announcements. Anybody have any updates they want to share or announcements that they'd like to share with us? Okay, then we are at item 9 on the agenda, and that is to adjourn. Yes, great job today, Claire. Absolutely. Thank you for taking on this challenging role. We are looking forward to getting to know you better, and hopefully you get an opportunity, as you were mentioning, to meet with all of us individually to get to know us that way as well. So with that, I hope you all have a fabulous weekend. Hope you have something fun planned and not work related, and we will see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.